Make sense of the mystery of life with ancient wisdom to navigate change in our modern times. Welcome. I'm your host, Tanishka, and this is the Moon Woman podcast.
Hi. So you might have felt like you've been through a juicer lately, and you're not alone if you have. We have had a very intense ride through not just eclipse season, but also Venus being retrograde, i.e., the planet of love, of social connection, of self-love, being in the underworld. So this is when we see the shadow of friends, lovers, and yeah, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on our own shadow in the dance of relating. You know, how much of our relationship, communication, and behaviors are conscious, intentional, and how much is coming from an unconscious wound that we're harboring, i.e., like a child acting out against a surrogate parent. The good news, Venus will emerge from the underworld on the full moon, which is happening on the 12th of April or the early hours of the 13th, depending on where you are in relation to the date line, but I'll put a link so you can see it in your neck of the woods. And Libra, of course, is the sign of relationships. So, you know, this is like putting um, so much attention on how we do relationships. It's time for us to step it up, to go through a metamorphosis, a relationship revolution, so that we're not just playing out the same old dance, but with a different partner. Oh, there we go. I don't know if you can hear it, but the call to prayers started in the background. I'm here in Morocco still. So, if you've been less social, okay, if you've kind of hidden under a rock lately, again, not alone, but you're likely to feel like catching up with friends, coming out of your shell after this full moon on the 12th. And so this is a good time to reconnect with loved ones because everyone's going to feel more open to connection. Now, a little bit of a warning. This full moon is, we're going to have the sun in Aries, the opposite sign, conjunct Chiron. Now, Chiron is the planetoid that brings up the biggest wound that we've come here to heal this lifetime. Now, Aries is the youngest of all the signs. So, this is bringing up potentially the wound that we received that catalyzed our first loss of innocence. So, for many people, that's at age 7, the end of the first 7 year cycle. For others, it may be to do with not feeling heard, not feeling understood, especially by authority figures, whether that's the world at large, whether that's our parents, whether that's our boss. But in the myth of Aries, he is basically locked up in an urn by two giants. And this is a metaphor for us feeling like we can't voice our needs. We can't speak up on our own behalf and be our own best friend, be loyal to ourselves, and speak up in a way that is clear, concise, not emotional, so that the other person can receive it. Because if we come in guns blazing, yelling at the other person, they're just going to go, right, and put up a wall of defense, like a fire shield, all right? But if we're able to process our hurt, then through journaling, for instance, then we can come to the other person and speak calmly so that we can negotiate a peace deal on our own behalf. And those that struggle with this are those that still haven't healed their deepest core wound. And understandable if you're listening to this and you're not yet through your Chiron return, which happens at the age of 49. That's when our wound comes up. And for those of you like me who have Chiron in Aries, this is a transit that we're still in, a 7-year transit of working on our core wound. What fun. So this full moon is likely to bring it to a head. One of the other ways that the wound in Aries can show up is that we basically isolate ourselves or try to do too much without enough support, i.e., be overly independent. And so when this happens, we often don't ask for help until we're so far beyond our coping mechanisms that we are like a child, okay? We're either having a temper tantrum or we're imploding into a mood. What does a mood look like? Well, that's when we're unconsciously blaming everyone and everyone around us rather than look at our part in the dance, our unconscious thoughts and behaviors that have contributed to our sense of feeling overwhelmed or angry, hurt, alone. And so, this full moon, what full moon does is it brings things to a head and it illuminates things. So, if there's someone in your world who is petulant like a child, who tries to punish you emotionally because they're running a story that they feel justified to hurt you because you've hurt them, give them a wide berth around this full moon because the chance of people acting out recklessly in a hot-headed way, i.e., crimes of passion, is accentuated this full moon. So if anyone comes to mind intuitively, just give them some distance, okay? Because their behavior flags that they don't have the capacity, they don't have the maturity to have a diplomatic conversation, okay? And so if you're the person that they're scapegoating, i.e., punishing, which is passive aggressive behavior, emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, then you want to give them a wide berth, all right? Now, fortunately, I should add that we have Mars, the planet which governs the masculine and in all of us, and forward action in Cancer, the sign of the mother. So this can really add fuel to people combusting internally, having a mood, particularly if they've got unresolved mother issues that they're projecting onto women, partners, prospective partners, and so on. But as Venus stations direct, i.e., appears to be moving forwards, we're going to feel like we can now move forwards with what our heart truly wants to be doing. So this will help appease feelings of frustration and impatience that you might have felt at obstructions and setbacks lately. So yeah, and all of this will be happening, Venus will be moving forwards conjunct Saturn. Now, Saturn, ruler of Capricorn, is the father. So, depending on the state of your inner father, you'll either have done some internal or external restructuring during this Venus retrograde. You might have really looked at what it is that you don't love in your life and taken steps to address that so that, your heart can be happier. Yeah, you can be doing more of what you do want, not what you don't want to be doing. But this Venus stationing direct on this full moon in the sign of relationships, conjunct Saturn, may end up as a marriage proposal or a long-term commitment for some because Saturn is the planet, if we think about the rings around the planet of Saturn, it's about our cycles of time. Okay, so it's the planet that governs traditions, long-term commitments. So yeah, for some, you may break with, your long-term commitments or with tradition in order to move forwards and honor your own heart. For others, this might be a crossing of the threshold to make a long-term commitment now that you've gone deep into yourself and thought long and hard about it. So, yeah, that's my rundown of what we're heading into, the astro weather, so to speak. And yeah, if you enjoyed this post, you've got my blessing to share it, and I'd love to read your comments below. Have a great full moon, and thanks for watching.